Welcome in. Belly up, have a seat, and grab a drink as we talk some Wingman Fantasy Football. Welcome into another edition of Wingman Fantasy Football, the League Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Furley, and as always, I'd like to thank all of you, or any of you who may be watching or listening to today's show. This is episode 80, Week 15 Rewind and Week 16 Preview. And before we get any further along, let's make sure that everybody is in the room. Wingman Assemble! All right, in this episode, we have a jammed-packed show for you today as we will be going over the game rewinds, check in on our Goosometer, take a look at our trade watch, have another installment of a Mike Rant. Of course, we will say farewell to our most recently departed managers. And then after that, we will take a time to preview Week 16, the semifinals of our playoffs, as we will check the NFL schedules, check in on the player news and notes, look at our matchups for this week. Also, we will check in on the activity of our waiver wire, take a look at the newest power rankings, and dive into the mailbag. But before we do any of that, let's check in on the themes for this past week. This past week was the first round of our playoffs, and it was win or go home. But unfortunately, the Ravens were not enough. All right, guys, let's check in on the Week 15 Rewind. Let's go back.
Week 15 Rewind.
All right, guys, this was the first round matchup, our wild card matchup, if you will. Our play-in matchup, this was the 4-5 battle to get into the semifinals, and we had our fourth seed, Katie's King George, up against Kory's Mac Daddy 2s, who finished the regular season in the 5 seed. This is the third time that these two teams had played each other, as in the regular season, they split the season series 1-1, with Katie's King George taking the Week 5 matchup, while Kory's Mac Daddy 2s won just a couple of weeks ago in their Week 13 matchup. But in this one, we have Mac Daddy 2s able to defeat King George 100.04 to 78.04 for a 22-point victory. And this one was all locked up for Kory by the end of Sunday night, even before DeAndre Swift took the field on Monday. And Kory now has won 3 straight games, and he is now rolling. All right, let's see what top performers propel Kory to this playoff victory, as he had freshly acquired Ty Chandler put in his lineup, played on the Saturday game, and he showed out, getting 23.2 points. And Deebo Samuel.
Who?
Deebo Samuel keeps chugging along, as he has 19.9 points last week, and he is chugging along on that train. And his fellow train rider, CeeDee Lamb, got a garbage touchdown to ensure that he stayed on the rails, as he got 15.1 points. That is now 9 straight games for CeeDee Lamb with over 13.5 points. As for the duds for Mac Daddy 2s, he had Saquon Barkley could only get 4.7 points. He did have some strong players that were on his bench, as Chris Godwin out of nowhere scored 20.5 points, but however on the bench. And Devin Singletary, who keeps kind of playing nice in the end of the season here, had 19 points on the bench. As for Katie's King George, she had some strong players, although it wasn't enough in a team effort, as she had Lamar Jackson get 20.54 points.
He's heating up.
Also, Arizona running back James Conner had a nice game at 16.4 points.
He's heating up.
And newly acquired Justin Tucker had a nice game of 12 points, and he is chugging along, as he has had 4 or more games in a row with 10 or more points. She did have a couple of duds, however, as the Beach Boy, Garrett Wilson, had only 4.4 points, and Odell Beckham dropped almost every pass thrown his way, and he could only get 1.9 points. She did have one strong player on her bench as Deontay Johnson of the Steelers scored 14.2 points.
He's heating up!
All right, guys, that's the only game we're going to go over because that's the only game that mattered last week. And so Kory is moving on, and Katie has been eliminated. All right, guys, with that being said, let's check in on our trade watch. Buy, sell.
Wingman Fantasy Football Trade Watch.
All right, we're going to look at this one a little differently this time around as our regular season is over. And really all that matters now is what these guys are going to do for their managers going forward. So let's just reiterate what this trade is that we're discussing today. It's Red Sox Nation acquired Raheem Mostert in exchange for Davante Adams, who went to Amazin Spidey. But before we can see how they're going to propel us going forward in our playoffs, let's do one last check on if they met the goals of the acquiring managers at the time of the trade. If you recall, I asserted that Red Sox Nation could hope that Raheem Mostert would get at least 80% of the output that he did through the first 8 weeks while he was on Amazin Spidey, and let's see if he was able to meet that goal. As during the first 8 weeks for Raheem Mostert, while on Amazin Spidey's team, he averaged 18.58 points per game. In the past 7 weeks, in 6 games played, Raheem Mostert has averaged 16.18 points per game for Red Sox Nation. That is 87% of the first 8 games output. So he has surpassed that 80% minimum. So he has played just as well as he did in the first half of the season. And actually, just to be clear here, over the last 4 weeks, Raheem Mostert is the 3rd highest scorer of all running backs, only behind Kyren Williams and Christian McCaffrey. So Mostert has been good for all year long. As for Amazin Spidey, let's see how Davante Adams did for him. If you recall, I said the goal, he kind of had a slow, middling start, and I was hoping that Davante Adams could return to previous year's form. Unfortunately, that has not been the case, but he did not get any worse. During the first 8 weeks while Davante Adams was on Red Sox Nation, he was scoring 11.93 points per game. And in the past 7 weeks, in 6 games played, he is averaging 12.25 points per game for Amazin Spidey. So he has improved by a little over 1/4 point per game. Unfortunately, he has not outscored his replacement players that would have taken his place if he was not on the team. During that 7-week span, Amazin Spidey would have played a combination of Nico Collins, George Kittle, and Dalton Kincaid. And I took the points for these players. Like there's some times where I played Kittle over Nico Collins, so I did not put Nico Collins points in those games. So in those replacement games with Nico Collins, George Kittle, and Dalton Kincaid, they have averaged 12.39 points. So the replacement players have averaged about 0.15 points better than Davante Adams. So overall, this position has scored between 12 and 12.5 points per game. So Adams has not improved Amazin Spidey's team in this regard. And if you want to go straight head-to-head, like I said, Mostert has averaged 16.18 points since being acquired by Red Sox Nation, while Davante Adams has scored 12.25 points since being acquired by Amazin Spidey. So Red Sox Nation has gained almost 4 points per game in this deal. But if you recall, Amazin Spidey did a hedge trade picking up Derrick Henry for Justin Herbert. And during the last 4 weeks, Henry has averaged 16.3 points, taking the hit off in half. So Amazin Spidey has now lost 2 points per game with this deal. And so the way I look at it, in a way, I lost 2 points for the chance to get Davante Adams returning to glory. It did not happen. But again, this doesn't really matter what's happened in the past because they are where they are right now. So if Davante Adams can have a big game in these next 1 or 2, preferably this one first, it'll make it all worth it. If not, we will revisit this as the playoffs come to a close to see if this trade really helped these managers. We already know it helped Red Sox Nation in the regular season take home the number 2 seed and get a regular season payout. Amazin Spidey would have been the 1 seed regardless. So now it's time to see how these players will help their managers in the playoffs. All right, with that being said, let's get into a new installment of a Mike Rant.
Baby Rant, Karen Rant, Monty Rant,
I don't care whose fault it is. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think.
Mike Rant.
All right, so this one's going to sound a little weird, but my rant today is Christmas Day. All right, what do I mean by this? NFL is encroaching on Christmas Day. I know last year Christmas was on a Sunday, so it made sense. But now you're overreaching NFL. We've got 3 NFL games on Christmas. This used to be the NBA holiday, and NBA games are so nice for Christmas Day. You put them on in the background. When your favorite team's playing, you pay a little more attention during that game. But if they lose, no big deal. It's just a regular season game. But now we've got 3 NFL games and then the last 3 games of the week with high pressure, high anxiety, as we're going to be either not paying attention to our fantasy teams in high pressure games, or we're going to be paying attention to the NFL games and ignoring our family and friends and food. This is just, it doesn't mix. I know you're trying to get NFL and all these holidays, but some things just need to be low key. Family time, joyful time, not pressure and anxiety. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Even without the anxiety part, we're going to have at least 2 of our managers in the semifinals are going to be upset and grumpy on Christmas. 2 might be happy, but that's 50% of our managers that have games on that day are going to be in a bad mood when they're supposed to be in a joyful mood. So my rant is the NFL for overloading Christmas with too many important NFL games. All right, now it is time to send off our most recently eliminated manager. This one goes to Katie's King George, as she was eliminated last week in her being defeated by Kory's Mac Daddy 2s. She started off the season hot, 6-1, but the injuries just were too much and they caught up to King George. Let's just go through them to show you how tough her season was this year. She had Aaron Rodgers get hurt in the first game of the season on the second play. Sure, she didn't have Aaron Rodgers, but it quashed her breakout season that Garrett Wilson was supposed to have. Ugh. That same week, Aaron Jones came out of the gate gangbusters, getting 25.5 points in week 1, but he left the game at the end with a hamstring injury, and ever since that point, he was 1 game in, 2 games out. Questionable, perpetually questionable, and he had a subpar year. Tough break for Aaron Jones. Then, her number 1 pick, her only player who was playing good every week, Justin Jefferson, pulled up lame in week 5 and missed 7 weeks, leaving King George to fend for herself. And she still did okay. She plugged in the holes with James Conner, who then quickly got hurt himself. Then Brian Robinson was getting points on the bench, and when she finally needed to use him for points, he got hurt and has now missed 3 games. And CJ Stroud also is going to miss 2 games. Injuries. She battled back as long as she could, but in the end, it was too much. All right, guys. Now that we have finished our rewind portion for the Week 15 part, we are going to get into the preview for Week 16, but we will do that right after a very short break. All right, guys, welcome back. All right, in this part of the show, in our Week 16 preview, we will check in on the player news and practice reports, go over this week's playoff matchups, check in on the activity of our waiver wire, see who is on top of the newest power rankings, and of course, we'll dive into the mailbag. But before we do any of that, let's set the slate for the prime time and holiday games for this busy and extended NFL weekend. All right, let's check in on our news and notes. All right, guys. Once again, be reminded that we have no teams on bye this week, nor for the rest of the season. So unless your player is hurt, they will be available to be in your lineup. Let's set the schedule for the prime time and holiday games. On Monday, Christmas Day, we have 3 games, as we have the Baltimore Ravens heading to the West Coast to take on the San Francisco 49ers at 8:15 p.m. And this is a matchup of the two top teams in the entire league, the current number one seed of each conference, and a potential Super Bowl preview. Also on Monday night, we have the New York Giants taking on a division foe of the Philadelphia Eagles at 4:30 p.m. And while the wrapping paper is still all over the floor, we have the Las Vegas Raiders will head over to Arrowhead to clash with the Kansas City Chiefs at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. On Sunday night, we have the New England Patriots will try to give the Broncos a lump of coal and spoil the Broncos' playoff chances to make the playoffs as they play in Denver at 8:20 p.m. And also, there were two games this Saturday. We had at 8:15 p.m. on Saturday, the Buffalo Bills took on the LA Chargers in a game that no one saw on TV because this one was being exclusively offered on Peacock. Just click on this barcode up in the corner, right? I will not be coerced to get a new app or subscribe to a new service. I was perfectly fine listening to the Gabe Davis long touchdown bomb on the radio. Screw you, Peacock. And for the early game that was on Saturday, we had the Cincinnati Bengals making their way to Pittsburgh for a scuffle with the Steelers. And of course, with Christmas just around the corner, we had to have Mason Rudolph help guide the Steelers to slay the Cincinnati Bengals in a holiday special. And on this past Thursday night, we had the New Orleans Saints Nick rumble with the Rams in LA. Now for some other player news and practice reports. We have Jerick McKinnon, Kansas City running back, has been ruled out for the Christmas Day game against the Raiders. Also in that same game, Kansas City Chiefs will be without Kadarius Toney and McCole Hardman. I'm wondering if this is a Christmas present to Patrick Mahomes from Coach Andy Reid, as he will have no one on the field who will step off sides or drop perfectly thrown passes. Merry Christmas to you, Patrick. Enjoy your day off from Kadarius Toney. In the Indianapolis game, we have running back Zach Moss has been ruled out, making way for Jonathan Taylor to take full control of the backfield in a tough matchup in Atlanta. While the Indianapolis Colts wide receiver Michael Pittman, who earlier was stated to have cleared the concussion protocol, had a relapse and is now feeling concussion symptoms once again, and he has been ruled out this weekend. Las Vegas tight end Michael Mayer has also been ruled out from the Monday game with a toe injury, and Las Vegas running back Josh Jacobs is listed as questionable, did get in a limited session on Friday, and is hoping to play. Tennessee quarterback Will Levis, the Banana Man, is unlikely to play this week, making way for Ryan Tannehill to return to the starting lineup for the first time since Week 6. Washington Commanders running back Brian Robinson has been ruled out, and he will miss his third game with a hamstring injury. New England running back Ramondre Stevenson will also miss his third game as he's been ruled out with a high ankle sprain. Seattle quarterback Geno Smith is no longer on the injury report, and he is expected to make the start Sunday against the Titans. We have the New York Jets quarterbacks Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers are both out this week. Houston quarterback C.J. Stroud has been ruled out as he is still in the concussion protocol. And we have more Houston news here as Nico Collins is questionable heading into Sunday with a calf injury, and we're not sure yet if he's going to play or not. While Noah Brown is now off of the injury report, making way that he should be good to go for this Sunday's contest. Also, we have Jacksonville quarterback Trevor Lawrence has been cleared from the concussion protocol, and he will get the start this Sunday. Green Bay wide receiver Jaden Reed has missed practice all week and is listed as questionable, and we'll just have to see if he's going to go or not later on Sunday. Miami wide receiver Tyreek Hill did return to practice in a limited capacity. He's going to be questionable, and you're going to want to check wingmanentertainment.net/game day to see if he's active or not, as that is the 4:25 game technically, so we will not be able to tell you for sure if he's in or out by our live stream on Sunday morning. So check back on wingmanentertainment.net/game day to check the inactives to make sure whether or not Tyreek Hill will be active. Baltimore wide receiver Zay Jones is listed as questionable for the Monday night's game, but he is expected to play. And Green Bay wide receiver Christian Watson is currently listed as doubtful and is likely to miss one more week. All right, guys, let's see who's playing who in this week's playoff matchups.
This week's matchup.
All right, guys, and this week we are going to start off with our consolation bracket. These are our 4 teams trying to vie for 7th place. Let's start with the first matchup here as the number 7 seed, Nick's Waddle Away, is up against Bernie's Team B.
I'm Cuban B. Yes, Cuban B.
Team B is the 10th seed going into this consolation bracket, but let's see some of our strong and weak matchups for these managers. As Nick's Waddle Away has his best matchup is Devontae Smith up against the New York Giants, and that is the 5th easiest matchup for wide receivers. While his worst matchup is Tony Pollard up against the Miami defense, and that is the 11th most difficult matchup for running backs. As for Bernie's Team B, his best matchup this week is Calvin Risky up against Tampa Bay, and that is the 4th easiest matchup for wide receivers in terms of fantasy points, while his worst matchup is Jalen Waddle up against the Dallas Cowboys, and that is the 6th most difficult matchup for wide receivers. On to our next game, we have number 8, Reggie's Lionites up against number 9, Ken's Tampa Brady. And in this one, the best matchup of the week for Lionites is Amon-Ra St. Brown, the Sun God, up against the Minnesota Vikings, and that is the 10th best matchup for wide receivers. But in that same game, his worst matchup this week is Jahmyr Gibbs up against the Minnesota Vikings, and that is the 6th most difficult matchup for running backs. All right, this should be an automatic advance here for Lionized, as Ken's Tampa Brady has everyone hurt, and he left all of his IR and out players in his lineup. So he'll be lucky to get 35 to 45 points. So if Reggie loses, I don't know what to tell you. This is as far as you're going to go. All right, on to our 5th place game. And this is the losers of the big boy bracket of the play-in round. As Katie's King George, the number 4 seed, is up against Alex's They Took Our Jobs at the number 6 seed. Of course, Alex had the auto loss last week as the number 3 seed had an official buy in terms of Wingman Fantasy Football, but not in terms of the Yahoo platform. Let's see what strong and what players have good matchups and or bad matchups for these managers going into the 5th place game. This is the last game of the season for these managers, and the winner of this will be 5th place, and the loser will be 6th for the final standings and for their legacy stats. So the best matchup here for Katie's King George is the Beach Boy, Garrett Wilson, against the Washington Commanders, and that is the 2nd easiest matchup for wide receivers. And her worst matchup is her quarterback, Lamar Jackson, up against the San Francisco 49ers, and that is the 5th most difficult matchup for quarterbacks. Now, for Alex's They Took Our Jobs, his best matchup is Isaiah Pacheco, who will have the backfield mostly to himself this week with McKinnon being out, and that is the 11th easiest matchup as they're facing the Las Vegas Raiders. His worst matchup this week is Alvin Kamara up against the LA Rams, and that is the 3rd most difficult matchup for running backs. And they played Thursday night, and Kamara had a tough go at it. All right, guys, it is now time to check in on our big boy bracket.
Wingman Fantasy Football's Big Boy Bracket.
Who's a big boy? All right. In our big boy bracket, our semifinals for the league championship, we have the number 1 seed at 9-5. Amazin Spidey is up against the number 5 seed at 7-7. Kory's Mac Daddy 2s. And the winner of this game will secure themselves a $150 payout, as they will get no worse than runner-up for the season. And let's look at our strong and tough matchups for these managers this week. The best matchup for Amazin Spidey is Derrick Henry up against Seattle, and that is the 6th best matchup for running backs in terms of fantasy. While the worst matchup is Jonathan Taylor coming off his thumb surgery, playing against the Atlanta Falcons, and that is the 4th most difficult matchup for running backs. And there has not been any rushing touchdowns by running backs this season against Atlanta. Can Jonathan Taylor break that streak? I know someone who hopes so. On to Kory's Mac Daddy 2's strong and tough matchups. His best matchup this week is Justin Fields. As they're playing the Arizona Cardinals, and that is the 9th best matchup for quarterbacks. And his worst matchup is new sweetheart Ty Chandler, who's playing against the Detroit Lions, and that is the toughest matchup for running backs. All right, we're going to get a little deeper dive into this preview as this is the semifinals, guys. We have Spidey, who got off to a great start on Thursday night with Puka Nacua scoring 28.5 points. And as of now in his lineup, Spidey has 4 players that are going to be playing on Christmas Day. Hence, the Mike Rant. While Mac Daddy 2's is also going to have 3 players playing on Christmas Day. So we're going to have half of our rosters playing on Christmas Day in this matchup. Amazin Spidey has 3 players playing at 1 p.m. and 1 player playing at 8:15 p.m. While Mac Daddy 2's is going to have 2 playing at 4 p.m. and then 1 playing at 8:15 p.m. So it's going to come down to Christian McCaffrey versus Deebo Samuel, and these guys both have chances to score monster games, and they're both very good players. So this one's going to be very interesting and very stressful going into Christmas evening. On to our next game. We have a battle from the odd division, the number 2 seed, Jimerson's Red Sox Nation, who finished 9-5, up against Cubert's Rage, the number 3 seed, who finished at 8-6. And this one, let's look at the easy and tough matchups for these players. As Jimerson's Red Sox Nation best matchup this week went to James Cook up against the LA Chargers, as that was the 8th easiest matchup for running backs. And his worst matchup this week went to Jordan Love, as he's playing the Carolina Panthers, and that is the most difficult matchup in terms of fantasy point scoring for quarterbacks. Now for Cubert's Rage, his best matchup is Stephon Diggs against the LA Chargers, and that's the 3rd easiest matchup for receivers. So one of the Buffalo receivers is going to have a great game. Let's see if it's going to be Stephon Diggs, maybe Gabe Davis. Let's see. Well, who knows? And the worst matchup is Travis Kelce up against Las Vegas, and that is the 16th most difficult matchup. So as you can see here, his most difficult matchup is right in the middle. So he has no super hard matchups this week. Now let's look at this game a little more in depth. The initial projections for this game was a virtual tie, with Cubert's Rage heading into Thursday with a mere 0.10 point advantage. However, Red Sox Nation got off to a strong start on Thursday night as he released the Kyren.
Release the Kraken!
As Kyren Williams was able to score 16.4 points on Thursday night, but even that was under his projection, as Yahoo projected him to have over 17 points. And this matchup is quite different from the other matchup on the other side of the bracket here in relation to which players are playing in which days, as these managers will have almost all their players done by the end of the 4 o'clock games on Sunday. And these managers also had, they would have 3 players done by the end of Saturday night, as Red Sox Nation had 2 players join in Kyren Williams' party, as he had T. Higgins play on Saturday, and T. Higgins scored 22.5 points, taking advantage of the absence of Jamar Chase, and James Cook underperformed on the Saturday night game, scoring only 7 points in a plus matchup. While Cubert's Rage had a trio, Bills, in an amazingly soft matchup up against the nosediving Chargers in LA, but Josh Allen came through as he was responsible for 3 touchdowns, including 2 rushing touchdowns, and scored just under 27 points. While his kicker Tyler Bass hit the game-winning field goal with just under a minute in regulation, but could only get a total of 6 points for a mediocre game from his end. And Stephon Diggs keeps on struggling as he only scored 5.4 points in a super plus matchup. And as of now, there's only going to be 1 player left to play on Christmas Day in this matchup, as Travis Kelce will be playing on Monday for Paul. So like I said before, there'll be only 1 player who won't wait. So all but one player will be done in this matchup by the end of the 4 o'clock games on Sunday. So they will have a great idea of how the game is going to go during their Christmas Day, while the Mac Daddy 2s versus Amazin Spidey will have everything up in the air on Christmas Day. Red Sox Nation in his matchup has 2+ matchup players, with Cooks versus the Chargers and the Chicago defense versus the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals. But he already had one player underperform in a plus matchup. But he's got 4 negative matchups. This is Red Sox Nation I'm speaking of. And that's including a banged-up Tyreek Hill against a very strong Dallas defense. On the other hand, for Paul's Qubert Rage, it is almost all green lights ahead, as he has 5+ matchups this week, including the move that he put DK Metcalf into his starting lineup due to having such a strong matchup against the Titans. So he is moving his starters around and playing the matchups, and we'll see if it works for Paul's Qubert Rage. The only negative matchup he has in his lineup at all is Tyler Bass, kicker Tyler Bass, and he got 6 points, so that's pretty much what you would hope for in a negative matchup. All right, guys, let's check in on the waiver wire. All right, guys, sorry for all the jump cuts as I'm sneezing like crazy. But in this week's waiver wire, we had 4 waiver claims where there was only one NFL player that received multiple bids. All right, so our high price acquisition this week was Josh Palmer, who went to They Took Our Jobs for $26. David Njoku went to Kubert's Rage for $10, and the Green Bay defense also went to Kubert's Rage for $9, and he outbid Red Sox Nation, who put in a $4 bid. They Took Our Jobs also acquired the Las Vegas defense for $5. And I find this personally interesting here, is that They Took Our Jobs is more active and has spent more money on the waiver wire in the last 2 weeks since he's been eliminated than he did all of the rest of the regular season combined. Just an interesting thing I noticed. No big deal. Also, later in the week, these were not waiver wire pickups, but they were free agent pickups, as Lionize is recycling his team to pick up all Lions except for his kicker. Reggie, what's up? Michael Badgley is now the kicker of the Lions, and he is available as a free agent. So I hope you pick him up, or maybe I'll do it just to block you. You can have an all Lions starting lineup tomorrow by picking up Badgley. Go ahead, do it. Also, Amazin Spidey finally followed his own tip. He gave everyone a chance, but he made the move to pick up a kicker, Graham Gano, who is on the IR, to open up some roster flexibility going into the throughout the playoffs. All right, guys, let's take a look at our most updated power rankings.
I have the power!
By the power of Grayskull!
I'm living in it, no one man should have all that power.
Wingman Power Rankings.
All right, guys, the updated power rankings. Here we go. We have Amazin Spidey is still at top of the power rankings, followed by Kubert's Rage, who made the move into second. They Took Our Jobs is in third, while Red Sox Nation is holding steady at fourth, and Mac Daddy 2s has fallen down to 5. King George is in sixth, followed by Lionize, Team B, Waddle Away, and Tampa Brady. So as you can see here, except for, our top 6 teams in terms of standings are still in the top 6. So maybe the power rankings are a little more accurate than I first stated. Nah, probably not. All right, guys. With that being said, now let's take a dive into our mailbag, and we've got a heavy mailbag this week.
You've got mail. Wingman Fantasy Football.
Mailbag! All right, guys. This first one comes in from Reggie, and it says, "Hey, Mike, who is the most lovable team in our Wingman Fantasy Football League?" Let me think. Of course, my first inclination is to say myself. I mean, I'm a pretty lovable guy, or I think so. But if I really had to think about it, I'd have to say it is Lionized, a team that started off 0-5, went on a 6-game winning streak. That plucky Lionized and now they're picking all Lions to play in their lineup for their consolation bracket. I mean, who doesn't love that? A team who started off was an underdog, came back, fell just short, and is now having fun. That is our most lovable team. To you, Lionized, cheers to you for being the most lovable team in the Wingman Fantasy Football League. All right, our next question here comes in from Alex. It says, "What's up, Wingman? Why did my lineup change? I should have advanced past the first round of the playoffs and into the semis." So, for all of you out there who weren't aware, Alex's They Took Our Jobs was 6th place, and Yahoo does not have a setting to have only 5 playoff teams. And because our league was only 10 teams large, we had a cutoff of 5 teams who made the official playoff bracket. So unfortunately, we had a team who looked like they were in the playoffs, who I said I was going to have automatically lose. I was hoping it would just happen organically, but I said if they happen to win that 3-6 matchup, that I would manipulate their lineup to ensure that the number 3 seed won. And that's exactly what happened. I had to change Alex's lineup. I removed his kicker because that was the closest way to get everyone their points, the closest points that they would have earned, and still ensure that Paul's Cubert Rage advanced. So I know it's in the league settings that are posted in the beginning of the year and on the PDF on the Wingman Entertainment site. I've also mentioned it several times on the podcast, but obviously that does not get to all of our managers, as not everyone reads the long setting list there. And not everyone is a religious follower of this podcast, even though you should be. I'm just kidding there with that, Alex. So I apologize for not making that more clear to you. I should have maybe put a message out in the last couple weeks of the season in our league message board to make sure that everyone knew that. So I do apologize, but unfortunately, Alex, only the top 5 teams made it. So you were destined to lose either naturally or by commissioner manipulation. So I apologize for the confusion, but that is what happened. All right, on to our next mailbag entry, and this one comes from Anonymous. It says, "Dear Wingman, is it okay to pick up and drop players to try and block opponents from improving their teams during the playoffs?" All right, I know this is a touchy subject for some, but in my opinion, it is definitely okay. I think it's okay all year round, although it takes a lot of energy, but during the playoffs especially. The gloves are off. I will say this, though, and I've already done this, and I'll explain how you can do it and how it works and or doesn't work. So as far as I know, and that the intention of our league is, and in the past with Yahoo, if you pick up a player and then drop them the same day, they do not go to the waivers. They remain on the free agent list. So that prevents our managers from picking up 5 players, like, picking up a player, dropping him, picking up a player, dropping him, picking up a player, and having infinite number of players become on waiver list instead of free agents. And that, I would say, is wrong. But being that there are safeguards in our league where so in order to have a player be eligible to be dropped onto waivers, they have to be on your roster for a day. Now, it doesn't have to be 24 hours. They just have to be picked up, for example, on a Thursday. And if they're dropped on a Friday, they will then go to waivers. So in this instance, I picked up, just for an example, I picked up Gabe Davis because I thought he had the potential to have a strong game, and I don't know if anyone was going to pick him up. I don't think anyone would have, but I definitely didn't want that potential boom bust points coming to haunt me. So I picked him up on Thursday. He was available since Wednesday, so he was out there for a day and a half before I even picked him up. So I picked him up for free. I waited. I could have dropped him Friday because his game was Saturday, and he would have been ineligible, but I held on to him until, I think, Saturday. But nonetheless, and then I dropped him because I wasn't going to play him, and now he was going to go to waivers, and he was ineligible to be picked up by anybody else. I did the same thing with that drop. I picked up Evan Ingram because I thought he had a chance to have a good game on Sunday, but he's been on my roster since Saturday. I will drop him on Sunday, and that'll keep him unavailable for someone to pick him up. Now, the tricky part is picking up guys, before the 1 o'clock game, then dropping them once the game starts, picking up guys before the 4 o'clock game. But even if you do that, those guys are available. All these guys I've been picking up have been on free agent lists, for example. So if you really wanted Evan Ingram, you had 5 days to pick him up. It's up to you. No one's waiting for you, right? So I know that's me with a little bit of tone here, but overall, the idea is it is definitely okay to pick up and drop players to prevent your managers from improving their teams. Sometimes it backfires, so it's not. It doesn't always work. It takes a little strategy of when to pick them up, how long to hold them, and when to drop them so they're truly unavailable to be picked up by your opponents. So, if I would have picked up Gabe Davis on Wednesday and dropped him Thursday, he would have been available again for Saturday. So you've got to hold on to them long enough or let go of them late enough so that they will be unavailable to be picked up for their game days. So with that being said, like I said, yes, it's okay. Do what you got to do to get through the playoffs, and that is how you do it in, I would say, the most ethical and fair way. I mean, everyone's got a chance to get these guys. All right. So I think we're done with the show, guys. That was the end of the mailbag, right? So I would like to thank all you guys for watching and or listening to another episode of Wingman Fantasy Football, the League Podcast. I apologize so much for getting these out erratically and or late. I don't know if you're going to watch this tomorrow or not early Sunday. We will be doing a live stream again on Sunday at approximately 11:50 to go through the ins and outs on Christmas Eve here. So join me on Christmas Eve morning, and we're going to do a little different here since most of the news and notes on this episode is going to match that. We are going to do a live Q&A. So I'm going to have the chat bubble up for me, and just go ahead and send your chats in there, and I will address your chats on the live stream, so we can have a little back and forth as we head into a very stressful but a joyful weekend. With that being said, guys, so you can find us easily on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Google Podcasts, and YouTube Music. Just search Wingman the League for those platforms. If you want our video feeds, go ahead and go to wingmanentertainment.net/podcasts. And you can also find our video feeds on on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@wingmanfantasyfootball. Wow, excuse me. I just totally got something in my throat there. I apologize for that. All right. So if you want our video feeds, go to youtube.com/@wingmanfantasyfootball and go ahead and join us Sunday morning at 11:50 a.m. as we go over our ins and outs, talk a little bit of our playoff stresses and anxiety, have a little live chat back and forth. I want to say thank you as we are now up to 8 subscribers. So while you're there, just go ahead and subscribe, click your notifications. And if you leave a comment on any wingmanentertainment.net page or our YouTube page, we will get that comment and or question into our next mailbag segment. With that being said, guys, I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll check back before the new year. May your glasses be full, your mugs stay frosty, and we will see you next time.